Ever stop and wonder if the solid world around you is, well, maybe not so solid after all? Today, we are diving into a pretty wild idea from Itzhak Bentov's 1977 book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. It's a mechanical engineer's take on consciousness, and trust me, it's a fascinating ride. And that ride begins with a question that we've all probably kicked around in our heads at some point. What exactly is consciousness? I mean, where does my awareness, your awareness, actually come from? You know, what's so cool is how modern physics has to deal with this. Consciousness isn't just some philosophical problem for them, it's a variable that messes with their experiments. The very act of observing something can literally change the outcome. That forces us to ask a really huge question. Is our awareness a fundamental part of reality itself? To even begin to answer that, Bentov asks us to take a huge first step. He asks us to question the very nature of reality itself, everything we think is solid and real. According to Bentov, if you could zoom way, way in on any object, a table, a rock, your own hand, you wouldn't find anything solid. Not really. What you'd find is a whole lot of emptiness, just a void buzzing with these vibrating energy fields. That, he says, is what physical reality actually is. And this applies to you, too. The person listening to this right now is not a solid thing, but this incredibly complex pattern of energy vibrating in an ocean of empty space. I know, it's a wild thought, but it's the foundation for everything else we're about to get into. Okay, so if reality is just a vibration, how does that work? Well, Bentov uses this brilliant analogy to explain it all, a simple pendulum. He suggests that the entire universe, from the tiniest atoms to the biggest galaxies, all operates on this one simple principle. Think about it. A pendulum swings back and forth, right? It's got moments where it's moving at top speed, and then, for an infinitely brief moment at the very peak of its swing, it comes to a point of absolute rest before it changes direction. Reality, in this model, is just a constant dance between those two states, action and rest. Now, this is where things get really, really weird. This simple swinging motion actually mirrors a fundamental rule of quantum mechanics. At that perfect point of rest, we know the pendulum's momentum. It's zero. But here's the kicker. Quantum physics says if you know its momentum perfectly, you cannot know its position. It's like the universe literally won't let you see both at the same time. The pendulum's location just vanishes into mystery. So where does the pendulum go in that instant? Bentov's conclusion is absolutely radical. For its position to be unknowable, the object has to momentarily stop existing in a material form. It has to become non-material. It blinks out of existence. And get this, the scale we're talking about is just mind-boggling. The atoms that make you up aren't swinging like a grandfather clock. They're vibrating at a rate of 10 to the power of 15 times per second. That's a 1 with 15 zeros after it. It means our physical reality is blinking in and out of existence faster than we can possibly imagine. And that, of course, leads to the next huge question. If we are constantly flickering between being here and not here, where do we go during that off phase? This is where our own personal experience of consciousness finally enters the picture. Bentov proposes that this blinking is directly connected to how we perceive time itself. He splits time into two types. First, there's objective time. That's the clock on the wall, just marching forward at the same speed for everyone. But then there's subjective time. That's your own internal clock. You know how time feels to you. Sometimes it flies, and sometimes it just drags on and on. Usually those two clocks are pretty much in sync, but in certain states of consciousness, they completely decouple. When your mind wanders, or when you're dreaming, or in deep meditation, your internal experience of time can stretch and shrink in crazy ways. An entire, vivid, complex dream can play out in just a few seconds of objective clock time. So what's happening in those moments? Bentov proposes we have something he calls the observer, our non-physical consciousness, our psyche. He theorizes that during that tiny fraction of a second when our physical body blinks off, this observer is totally untethered from physical reality, and it expands outwards, possibly at infinite speed. And this, right here, is where we get to the grand synthesis of his whole model. This is where the physics of blinking matter and the psychology of our bending sense of time merge into one cohesive theory of consciousness. This quote is really the heart of the whole thing. Our conscious experience isn't just stuck in our physical bodies. We are constantly shuttling back and forth between our individual physical reality and a shared non-material realm every single time we blink. And Bentov suggests this mechanism could be the actual physical explanation for stuff that science has always had a hard time with. A sudden flash of intuition, a powerful gut feeling, maybe even telepathy. Could that just be information that our observer picked up during its momentary trip into that shared, non-physical reality, like tapping into a universal field of information? This totally redefines what expanding consciousness even means. It's not a metaphor here. According to this model, it's a literal development of our nervous system to become a better antenna, one that can consciously receive and understand information from these other spectrums of reality that we're already dipping into trillions of times a second. So, Bentov's model leaves us with a few core ideas. That reality is a vibration, not a solid. That our consciousness flickers in and out of this physical world. And that during those out moments, we tap into a shared universal reality. And all of that brings us to one final, truly mind-bending question. If this model is even partly right, and a piece of us expands to touch everything in the universe, over and over again, what are the true limits of what we can know?